This is a presentation on computer hacking. My name is Christopher Hansen. This is for CSET 4850, Computer and Network Security. We're going to start off with the history. We're going to talk about some of the computer hacking programs. Then we're going to talk about ethical hackers and what good do they do. And then we'll finally wrap it up with like black hats and gray hats, and how they're damage to the industry. So to start off in the history, hacking's kind of been around before electrical devices. The term wasn't really used. They used a different word. But people have always been trying to, be malicious towards one another for their own financial gain and stuff like that. So hacking, the term officially began in the 1960s, and it was used to describe like MIT students who were, like practicing like really like the programming languages of the time, and also to like describe students who would like, like hack the switch so the train would go faster, or whatever project they were trying to do over there at the time. And then, after the 70s, it started to be used a lot more. Um, Phone phreaks were around at the time, and that's when like computer hacking started to begin. Phone phreaks considered phone systems as like a equivalent to a computer system, so they would try to learn, try their hack and learn their stuff in the on the phone system, so they could prepare and get ready, so they could learn hacks and use it on the computer system. So an example of a person back in the day who was a phone phreak was like Captain Crunch. Um, and by the 80s, the government outlawed, made a law so you couldn't hack and get away with it. This is because during the early 80s, the FBI released a report saying that most hackers are described as mischievous young individuals trying to like better society or whatever, but there's still some hackers out there that were trying to be a detriment to society. And in the beginning, you have like Kevin Mitchnick, I think his name was. He was pretty popular in the hacking scene, and you had Ken Thompson. He made um, the Trojan horse right before the bill was passed. He had a presentation on it. And then I remember the book also talked about this. I can't remember the guy's name, but he created the first worm and he put it on the ARPANET and infected a ton of computers. And I remember reading in my research, he got probation and some fines for it. And this is before or maybe I think that was that the worm was after the bill, so that's how they were able to get him easily. Uh, so in the computer hacks, the first one we're going to talk about Metasploit. It's great for listening for information. But what I mean by listening for information is you can use Metasploit to gather information from your target over several weeks or months. This is what real life hackers use, or even ethical hackers will try to gather information over time. Um, and then once they have gotten enough information on the system, that's when they try their actual attempt at the hack. And what they're trying to do is Metasploit tries to find like a backdoor entrance is the easiest way to explain it. And Metasploit has like two modes, like an active exploit and a passive exploit. I got the code for the active exploit, and that's using the -J, and the passive is the I. Um, and I got a following just some steps I found on the internet that I use to use Metasploit. And you got to use these following commands. One, to set your IP. One to like set your payload. And then the actual exploit at the end. So here's an example. This is the guide I followed through when I did my my run with Metasploit. So as you can see, I think you gotta set the payload, set the IP, and after you get to the last line on the exploit line, you're basically good to go, and then you can just keep writing commands in from there. So it's a pretty good tool to use, easy to learn, and it's great for cracking into systems and getting into information that you shouldn't be able to get into. Next we got a snort. Snort's kind of the opposite of Metasploit. It's a network intrusion detection. So it's not going to really hack into any company's software or anything like that. But it's great because it basically gives you an alert when you set up all the rules of, like when something happens. So you could basically set up an alert. What's my example? So like here's my Snort rule example. So send an alert to any and any, which is like any ports from any user, I think. And then from this IP /24, that means the port 24, which is SMTP. And then the contents mail from root, and then the message root users attempt to send an email. So basically, with this alert, when any host on port 24 and it contains mail from the root, it will send that alert. So it's pretty useful. You can get plenty of rules set up, so when anyone on your system does anything, you basically get an alert and have information on it. It's pretty good software. It's easy to learn. There's 3 modes to it. There's a sniffer, there's a packet logger, and there's the network or the IDS, which is network intrusion detection, basically. And they're pretty self-explanatory on each one of them, too. The next one we're going to talk about is John the Ripper. It's used by enterprises to detect like weak passwords, default passwords, I think, and just overall not very good passwords, just from what I understand from my research. It's mainly used on the Linux language or the operating system, but I think from my research it can be used on several other languages as well. And to run John the Ripper, you need a password file from like the company or just whatever, you just need a password file. And then before you start, you need to make a non-root user account, which you'll run John under. You don't run John under the root user. And then assuming you have the password file, you can just use John, my password to attempt to crack it. And this is a single try, like a single attempt to crack. I don't have any examples. Okay. So AirCrack is a great program for breaking into Wi-Fi. It implements the best-known cracking algorithms to recover wireless keys. So like kind of how it works is you run AirCrack or whatever to get, like you run it. You already have your target, and let's say you're getting information, and basically you want to get enough IVs or key, a bunch of packets, enough information where after, I think the lowest they said was 20,000, but you want to get as many as possible, and then you want to attempt to crack it, because that'll give you the single greatest chance to break in and get the wireless keys that you need. And I remember reading that, the baseline of 20,000 could take a week to run, and after a week of running it might come up with the message that you need more keys. So it's not like you can just use this in an hour and be in someone's Wi-Fi. You're gonna have to be patient. And one of the things you need to do with AirCrack is you need to put your wireless card on monitor mode to find potential targets. I remember reading up on that, and I couldn't really set up my card to do that, so I wasn't able to really look for potential targets. But I know my next door neighbor doesn't have Wi-Fi, so or has Wi-Fi, I mean, but they don't really have much of a security. So I was able to use AirCrack to get into their network. I mean, I already know their password, so it's kind of defeats the purpose of trying to crack for something when you already know it. The next one we're going to talk about is Nessus. This is like a scanning software to find like vulnerabilities and like that hackers might exploit. It's pretty good. Like basically, from what I understand from my research, it's like almost like an antivirusware scan, but it's not looking for viruses, but it's a scan like that. It looks like the same interface and everything like that. It's very easy to run. And it's looking for like outdated passwords, default passwords, outdated software, and anything else that might be like a vulnerability issue. It's a really good software. But it only like reveals the problems. You know, you're gonna need to do like a penetration test or something to verify that they actually exist, because you know they might not actually be a problem. I didn't get to actually use the software because it's not open source. And then the last two programs we're going to talk about is Wireshark and TCP dump. They're kind of the same thing, but TCP dump's like a more it's more raw, and the Wireshark's a GUI. And Wireshark you can use to just like look at just look at a bunch of packet information. I remember in one class I had a lab where I had to just view all the different information and filter from different HTTP, SMTP, and try and see if there was any information in the packets that was worth anything other than like letters and numbers. You can use Wireshark to steal passwords or conduct man-in-the-middle attacks. I remember seeing it. I think it was a YouTube guide on how to use it to steal passwords. It was pretty simple. Like you just set up your capture to whatever network they're on, and then when they log into the page, you need to filter it by HTTP, and there should be like some text file or something, and then you'll scroll down on the terminal below, and it'll say admin or it'll say username and password, and it'll tell you. I think I had it set to admin and password, so it's pretty easy to find. TCD dump, like I said, is a more raw version. It creates dumps of traffic. It's important to specify the interface. We use this in I think Lab 3 quite a bit. This is the first I've ever used of TCP dump, so I've mainly used Wireshark before. It can do everything Wireshark can do in a much better way. I know it's really important to learn this language, or not language, this program for like the real world and networking. It's a really good tool. And lastly, we're going to follow up on ethical hacking. Ethical hackers are white hats. Unethical hackers are the gray/black hats. Ethical hackers are great for the industry because they can solve, problems in the company, some vulnerabilities that they didn't even know before hackers exploit them and cost them millions of dollars. When ethical hackers actually do like their job, like when they do their penetration test, they're normally hired by the CEO, the stakeholder. There's already an agreement sent, and the people that are, the managers and stuff of the business don't actually know what's going on, and they'll use social engineering, DDoS types of attacks, and many other ways to just like try and get the password or get into the system. Anyway, that's a vulnerability, like reverse engineering, stuff like that. So in conclusion, ethical hacking is an evolving field, or computer hacking is an evolving field that changes all the time. As computers change, the hacks are going to change. To be an ethical hacker, you need to go through some certifications. It's pretty important to do those if you want to actually go into the ethical hacking side of it. And they're great for the industry. All these programs are really useful for hacking, for security. Just all around, they're great tools, and I got the information from setools.org. That's where you get like the most up-to-date list of the programs for networking and stuff like that, and it's a good website. And that concludes the presentation for computer hacking. Thank you.